Yeah, hi folks. Yes, when it comes to the Outdoors and Freedom Party, the basic concept of buyer beware should be applied. Now, I know Sue Gray has done some great work in respect to COVID mandates, 1080, and generally fighting back against the Ardern government tyranny that is taking place today. But her party has two fundamental flaws, and this is one of them. Now, as you watch this clip, focus on what she doesn't say as opposed to what she says.
There's been a lot of talk recently about the three waters. Just to be clear, it's the drinking water, the sewage and the stormwater. So the three main water systems that each part of New Zealand has. And the government's plan is to nationalise it under their control, but with four bodies looking after it. There's a real concern from a lot of local people that they will lose control of these essential services. There's also concerns about what will be added to the water if it's under national control. There's a lot of pressure in towns to add more chemicals to water for so-called water safety, although there are other views that some of these chemicals are not healthy and haven't been tested enough. So the government tends to want to add fluoride to water. They're already proposing to add fluoride to the far north water against the wishes of many in the community. If the government controls the water, it makes it much more of a national decision and gives much less choice to the local people over what chemicals are in their water. There are also issues about the value of the water. So at the moment it's a ratepayer asset. All of the infrastructure for dams and supplies, bores, is a council asset. The proposal is that the government will take over those assets at a very discounted price, and so the ratepayers will lose their investment. There's so many issues about water when it's such an important, essential commodity. We've been through this in the past with the electricity centralisation, with the railway centralisation. We simply cannot afford to rush through with the loss of control of our local water under some whim of a government without proper consideration, proper consultation, without democracy. We must slow these processes down, and in Tauranga we certainly can't let commissioners appointed and controlled by the government make these decisions on behalf of our people.
Now, she didn't mention he puapua, and she didn't mention the central issue, which is separatism, race-based separatism, and she didn't mention Maori control over all New Zealand water. So why didn't she mention that? Well, here's why. Outdoors and Freedom Party, Donna Pokere-Phillips, co-leader. There's wokeism right there. But who is she? Donna Pokere-Phillips, Hauraki Waikato candidate for the Maori Party, the most radical racist party there is, and she was part of it. That is who she is. And here she is, in the thick of it.
Thank you, Nanaya. Donna?
E te iwi, maranga ake ai. E te iwi, maranga ake ai. Tēnā koutou e te iwi, tēnā koe mihi, tēnā koe nanaya. I've been working on the front line with our people for many, many years. Sadly, they feel that their voices have been silenced and no one cares. I'm standing for Hauraki Waikato because I care. I care that our babies are being taken by the state. I care because their parents and their grandparents are being incarcerated. I care about the state of our whānau and the state of the environment. The Māori Party is about protecting Papa Tuanuku and protecting our whakapapa. We will bring our babies home. We will bring their parents and their grandparents home. Māori Party says you will not take one more acre. You will not take one more litre. You will not take one more mokopuna. The Māori Party is the only true Indigenous voice for our people.
Now you'll notice she inserted the word Indigenous, which has become the buzzword for the grievance industry since the UN's Declaration on Indigenous Rights. But at the same time, she claims she's not a globalist. And by the way, folks, this is from a debate.
So I can confidently say that Māori are missing out, and when it comes to the government grants. So it's really important that the Māori Party be there to ensure that 25% of our whānau first policy actually gets directed to Māori, by Māori, for Māori.
Now, I wonder what would happen if I said to white people, by white people, for white people. I'd be hung out to dry. Now, folks, this is the question.
We need to address the name places within our tribal areas that tell the story of the history that happened to our people during those land wars. Every day we sit alongside these racist names that are in our towns. For example, Bryce Street, Fontensky Street, the city of Hamilton. Young people around the country, they're giving some strong messages that these named places are no longer a part of our history. It's about our history, not about Captain Cook's. And my question to you is, what are you going to do about removing these racial symbols across our country?
Now to the answer.
Donna, how whakaro, because without raising history, as Nanaya says, how do we minimise the trauma of Waikato Tainui descendants who live next to these parks and statues and on the streets?
Well, I just want to say it's not just Waikato Tainui. Bryce impacted on Pariaka and Taranaki as well. And I find it abhorrent that when I walk down Bryce Street in Kirikiriro, when I go out to places like Rahui Pōkeka with these names, I mean, in regards to Von Tempsky Street and Bryce Street, these are men that pillaged, raped, murdered women and children. So why should we glorify them?
So
why should my mokopuna have to walk down that street to be reminded of that whole process?
And that's the question. What would the Māori Party do with those names and statues and park names that are already there?
So what the Māori Party want to do is in 2026, we want to reclaim our name, Aotearoa, and we...
No, the name of this country is New Zealand.
We want to change all those names where we have been oppressed, and we're constantly reminded on a day-to-day basis about the colonisation.
So removing them?
Yes, we support removing them.
So she's into cancel culture.
And your whakaro, would you like to see the Māori flag flying next to the New Zealand flag on every public building every day?
Absolutely, and I'd celebrate the day that happens.
So she celebrates co-governance, which has never been part of a treaty. And there's more, folks.
And we've just had a budget, we've just had a budget, and out of, I think it was about $157 billion was, I wasn't too excited about the budget, and I haven't had a lot of time to go over the budget. From a Māori perspective, only $1 billion out of $157 billion has gone into Māori kaupapa, including the Māori Health Authority. So there's some major concerns, there's some little wins.
So she's pro the separatist Maori Health Authority.
I think that's what the government and the globalists are wanting for us, whereas what we want as communities is to thrive and to be ourselves and to be able to talk about what we want to talk about and to move on through this isolation and the discrimination and this bad treatment that the government's been giving to almost everybody, and actually find a way through that, but a way through where we come out stronger and where we come through as a really strong, powerful community. But to be able to do that, We really have to change the way everybody's acting. Like, we actually need everybody to front up and tick that voting box, you know. This is one of the really, really good things, though, because a lot of people want to help, but people are a little bit scared sometimes of speaking out because of the peer pressure or whatever. Well, actually, voting is a really easy thing you do, because you just have to turn up and you just have to secretly, nobody's watching you, you just secretly tick the box that you want to tick. Don't tick Labour or National or one of the ones that you normally tick. Choose someone different that is going to bring some whole different experience to the whole thing. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. But the second biggest group of voters in New Zealand are the people who don't vote. Now, it's the second biggest group of voters, and a lot of that is Maori, a lot of it is people that are doing sovereignty, that are people that are just fed up with the system, and I understand why they're fed up. And I'm not saying don't do what you're already doing. Keep doing all of that, but just come along and vote as well.
So she supports the sovereignty movement, even though the treaty clearly states that Maori ceded sovereignty to the Crown. She supports this flag of division.
And I've done when I was very young, the I won't vote because I was upset with the government. I mean, I've been an Indigenous activist pretty much all my life.
No, you haven't. You've been a Maori activist, but now you use the word Indigenous to link yourself to the UN.
Yeah, and there's a number of small parties, and ideologically, I think we have our differences, but where we find common ground is in the freedom space. Māori have been fighting for sovereignty for a long time.
So she openly admits she's pushing for separatism.
The irony is that they were budgeted $600 million, and all I can say, we're going to have more Māori. We're at the top of the OECD list for incarceration. We're going to have more Māori incarcerated. We've seen the brutality of the police, and Māori have been experiencing that for nearly 200 years.
Did the police create the gangs?
And I've had whānau that have been shot dead by the New Zealand police because they haven't dealt with the issues of racism.
It always comes back to racism, doesn't it? The biggest crutch ever. Now, to be fair to Donna, she's done some good work exposing problems relating to the vaccine. In fact, a family relation of hers got pericarditis from it, and I know how dangerous that can be, as I've had it myself in the past. But none of that matters, as her grievance race-based politics has no place in New Zealand.